to spend today with all of you here to talk. Thanks for the Product-Led Summit for inviting me to speak. And I'll be talking about user research and user sentiment and really building a foundation for product success with the 3 pillars of product data. So behavioral data, revenue data, and user sentiment, user insight data, and how we can use all 3 of these together to build better product experiences. And so a little bit about me. Let's see here. All right, a little bit about me. You heard a little bit, a sneak peek there, but my background is mostly in product management. And so I've been the first product manager at 5 different startups that all went on to be successfully acquired by companies like Adobe, Snapchat, Square, Rakuten. Some of those were pre-product, pre-company name, just 1 or 2 people in an apartment. Some of those were quickly growing and already at scale, like Weebly, but always been the first PM and really bringing products to market and helping scale product experiences. And so I took my entire experience after those 5 experiences and founded Sprig. And so I'm now the founder and CEO of Sprig. And we've raised close to $100 million from top VCs like Andreessen Horowitz, Accel, and First Round Capital. And our customers include many of the top fastest growing companies like Notion, Square, Coinbase, Robinhood, Stripe, Netflix, Dropbox, Loom, just to name a few of the companies that we work with, helping scale their user insights program. And so let's see here. So we'll talk a little bit about where I've used insights in my career and where it's been really impactful, and then talk a little bit about what it looks like for the companies that we work with, many of the fastest growing leading tech companies, how they're integrating user insights into their behavioral and their revenue data sets. And so we'll start with NPS. This is some data that we pulled, and this is really the core way a lot of companies measure user sentiment today, is that 2/3 of Fortune 500 companies use NPS. And so I'd love to hear a show of hands of who uses Net Promoter Score to measure user sentiment for your product experience. So about half of the folks here are using Net Promoter Score. Very common way to measure user sentiment. And one thing here, if we could just get the clock going. Yeah, on the timer, just so I don't go way over on time. It still says 30, so I'm not sure how much time I have left. So user sentiment is NPS is the main way for people to measure user sentiment. And so don't want to say user sentiment is NPS is bad, but I want to talk today about how many of the top companies are moving beyond NPS, how they're getting more robust measurements of their user insights program. And so first of all, for Net Promoter Score, it's 30 years old. So those of us that were using the internet 30 years ago, there was not much of an internet back then. So those pre-dial-up days, not really much to look at, not much to use. NPS was really invented by a consulting firm, Bain Consulting, and it was really for an offline world. So you checked into the hotel, like here at the Marriott, you checked out. There is a printout that you would fill out about a 0 to 10 score and asking about that experience. It's widely used and recognized by a lot of investors and boards and executives because it's something that's easy to benchmark. And so you can go from a health tech company to a fintech company. You can bring NPS along with you. It's very easy to drop in and understand on a broad level how user sentiment is performing for your product experience. But some of the challenges, though, with NPS, and this is what we're going to be digging in today, is that it's a very global, broad metric. And so when I was at Weebly, we were running Net Promoter Score, and our product team, we were constantly looking at our Net Promoter Score on a monthly basis. And one of our competitors ran a Super Bowl ad. So this February, they ran a Super Bowl ad. It had Joe Montana. They made a really big splash, and our NPS dropped. And we looked at our NPS data, and a lot of our customers were saying, you know what, I don't know if I'm going to recommend Weebly now because I'm hearing about this other company now. And I remember the product team, we were just really disappointed that there was so much outside of our control to measure Net Promoter Score. A lot of the companies that we work with at Sprig, they tell us that, for example, companies in the fintech space, their NPS score is primarily driven by the financial markets. So stock prices are good, people love their products. Stock prices are bad, they no longer recommend their products. And you might have seen the meme from Microsoft Windows popping up asking, would you recommend this browser or this operating system to a friend or family member? And so it can be overused, it's very broad, and it has its limitations for measuring user sentiment. And Lastly, our users are not just numbers. We want to really understand who they are. We want to understand who they are as people to dig into and see how our product is performing for our customers. And so in my career, I'll talk about one example here, is that I've always found user insights and understanding customer needs as the easiest way to move forward whenever I'm stuck in a situation. And so it could be around retention. We're seeing people not retaining with our product. Maybe we're seeing funnel drop off or activation process. Maybe we're not quite seeing our revenue goals be achieved that quarter and we're starting to fall behind. What I've always found is really digging into and talking to customers has always really unlocked the growth, has answered the questions that I've been looking for as a product manager. And so a quick story here at Verb. We're in private beta. We were a search engine, and we're a search engine where you can search for things like TV shows and restaurants. And this was about 12, 15 years ago, and we came up with a card for your search results. So this is when Google back was just a list of links before the Google that we know it today, where it's more of a card-based format. So this is pre what Google does today, and with a new innovative way for search and their search results. And we saw a lot of people using Verb in the private beta, but they're getting some great results and saying, hey, love the results that we're getting, but they weren't coming back. And so on day 7, they got an email from me asking, hey, you have not returned after that initial visit. Help me understand why you haven't returned, even though it looks like you've gotten some great results, looks really interesting, seems like this is what you were looking for. And they said that the value of our product was not necessarily the card format that we thought was so innovative and unique, but it was actually the social search and the ability to take those cards and actually curate those cards into collections like steakhouses in Austin, or movies that I want to see this year, or maybe restaurants that I want to go to with a friend, or travel plans that I have coming up. So we actually shut down our web product. We focus solely on a mobile native experience and letting people not only search for what they're looking for, but actually focus on social search, a curation product, and turn into a community gallery of what people could collect and share with their friends. And so I wanted to be a very successful product. We were acquired by Snapchat. It's in the Snapchat product today. But that was a really great example of really getting scrappy, understanding the customer insights, and then turning that into a breakthrough for that product experience. And so jumping into the meat of today, the 3 different types of product data, the behavioral data, so what our users are doing. And most of us have a really great analytics product instrumented into our products. Maybe it's Mixpanel, maybe it's Heap, perhaps it's Amplitude, and we all know exactly what our users are doing in our products. We know the clicks, we know the buttons, when they close the modal, how much time they spend on our products, very in-depth, robust data sets. There's also the revenue data. We know exactly how much our users are paying and the revenue mix and what they're buying and who's canceling and churning. But what we often see at Sprig when we go to start work with many companies is that there's a big appetite for a more robust user insights measurement program. So companies today are looking to get user insights on the same level of depth and robustness as a behavioral or revenue data set. So we've got all these great dashboards for behavioral, we've got all these great dashboards for revenue, but user insights is a huge opportunity. And this is where we can move beyond Net Promoter Score as an industry and get more of a full balance sheet of the user health and how our products are meeting customer needs. And so today I encourage all of you to really focus on the why. We know the revenue data, we know the behavioral data, but the user insights is typically going to be the most actionable data set and the leading indicator for whether users will return for our products and whether they will continue or become customers in the future. And so when I started Sprig, we were very early, no one had heard of us, and we started to get many of the top fastest growing companies coming to us and saying, hey, I want to instrument Sprig into our product experience. So this is just some of our customers here, Coinbase, Dropbox, Robinhood. Google is one of the pioneers in the field of in-product surveying and instrumentation. So I included them here as an example as well. These companies were coming to us, and we noticed 2 main trends for how they're moving beyond Net Promoter Score and building a more robust measurement program to understand user insights in a more granular, robust way alongside their behavioral and their revenue data sets. And we saw 2 types of user insights. One is ongoing measurement. So I'll be talking about that here in just a second. And this is really continuous user surveying in the product experiences at key moments in the user's journey. And those are wired up, those are running, those are KPIs for these companies to understand the health of their products. And so maybe they're running Net Promoter Score, they understand globally how their product is doing, but they want to get more granular and they want to understand specific flows to see how those flows are meeting customer needs. The second type of user insights we see is what we call here at Sprig ad hoc surveys. And so you want to drill down. Maybe you're running something like NPS, or maybe you're running a CSAT survey or a critical user journey survey, which I'll talk about in just a second. But it opens up some questions, and you need to drill in deeper to answer specific questions. So second type is ad hoc measurement. And so that first type, ongoing measurement, and this is really moving beyond Net Promoter Score or augmenting Net Promoter Score if it's something that is important for you to keep in your products. So this is one of our customers, Shift, and you can imagine if they were running Net Promoter Score and car prices for used cars have significantly increased. That would most likely be the biggest driver for their Net Promoter Score. But what you'll notice in a continuous user journey measurement like this is that it's actually inward. So it's focused on the product experience itself. And this is what's really critical for measuring the user sentiment of our products is we're asking inward-facing questions that are ignoring or omitting the external factors in the world. And so Shift now has a specific North Star to understand whether their product is actually meeting customer needs for the online used shopping experience. And this is removing a lot of the noise in the world, and it allows them to specifically understand whether their product is improving this month compared to last month, and whether they're building a better product experience. And so critical user journeys, what it really entails is looking at your core flows. So if you're a product manager, maybe there's one critical user journey that you're responsible for. If you're a group product manager or a director, maybe there are multiple critical user journeys. Maybe you're a C-level product executive. You might have the entire product line, and you might have 3, 5, or even 8 critical user journeys that you're responsible for. And so what we see our customers using Sprig for is, again, moving beyond Net Promoter Score, a single score. And what they're instead doing is that they're mapping out their critical user journeys, and they're running one in-product survey at the end of that flow. So the user completes the journey. Maybe they successfully complete the trade, or maybe there's a thank you screen after they add that new product to their online store. But they also add a second survey when users abandon the flow. And so for each critical user journey, they're wiring and instrumenting 2 in-product surveys, one for the happy path and one for when the user gets stuck, there's an error, they abandon that flow. And together, they're able to look at both of those in-product surveys and understand whether their core user flows are meeting customer needs. And so why we see these companies use critical user journeys and why we recommend companies to move beyond Net Promoter Score or augment Net Promoter Score with critical user journey measurement. The first, understanding whether your product is addressing user needs. And so all of us building products, our products solve a job to be done. Our product gets a user from point A to point B. But when we think more inward, when we want the full balance sheet of our user experience, what's even more important and more actionable is we're able to look at each of our core user flows and understand whether each of those flows is getting the user from point A to point B. So adding a new product, making a trade, depositing funds, cashing out, inviting a teammate, whatever your critical user journeys are in your product, you need to make sure that each of those core flows is getting users from point A to point B, because holistically, that's what's going to create an award-winning product experience. The second one is where to prioritize. So here at Sprig, we have 4 critical user journeys that we look at. And what it enables us to do is look at the scores that are lower compared to the scores that are higher in our flow. So what are the flows that are not meeting user needs? We look at it on a 1 to 5 scale. So where are maybe the 2s and 3s for our flows? And this allows the product team to focus their efforts on the critical user journeys that are less meeting customer needs and some of the higher performing flows. The third one is for your product team. You want to tie all the changes back to the critical user journeys. Maybe you launch a new feature, maybe you redesign a critical user journey and you see a drop in your score. You know that you need to dig in, you've actually had a regression in the user experience. Perhaps you make a new change to your product, or maybe you fix a critical bug, you might find out that the score actually improves. And so setting goals and really moving forward with your critical user journey measurement allows the product team to make sure that you're taking steps forward in building a better user experience. And then the comparative analysis. And so really benchmarking a flow against other product experiences. And so validating. So we do have, which we'll get into in a second, a set of over 100 different templates that are free on our website. So you can take a look and try those out and get some inspiration and some ideas for what this might look like. But if you have a product that requires a more bespoke or custom language to measure a core specific flow, what we do recommend, given that this is a multi-year measurement, so you want to set it, you want to measure it for many, many years, very similar to Net Promoter Score, is that you want to make sure that the questions that you're asking are actually aligned with user expectations. And so if you're using something off the shelf, maybe you find a template, maybe it's about how your onboarding experience was, or maybe that checkout experience, you might not necessarily need to test and make sure that the questions are worded the right way. But if you're coming with something new and unique for your product or your business, it is important to at least ask some of your customers, is this survey worded in a way that aligns with your expectations? We found that when you change the wording, for example, you change the NPS wording, it will impact the score. And so you want to really make sure that when you roll these out, that you don't make any changes to the wording or how they're triggered and who they're triggered to avoid changes in the score, so you can look at month over month and year over year adjustments along the way. And so prioritizing the critical user journeys, so where do you want to measure? What are the core flows that are really important to instrument your products to move beyond Net Promoter Score? And so this is the grid that we use. There's the high importance. You generally want to do the high important flows and measure those up to make sure that those are meeting customer needs. And it could be even a low frequency flow. So onboarding for B2C companies is when you lose most of your users. But in B2B, the primary reason for a company to churn is actually due to onboarding as well. And so regardless of a B2C or B2B company, onboarding, even though it is a low frequency action, it is going to be one of the most important actions, and something that we measure at Sprig, not only for our free plan, but also for our paid contracted annual plans as well. And so if you look at, you want to focus on the high importance, high frequency, such as checkout, and perhaps ignore some of the low importance, low frequency ones, like maybe signing out. And so getting started with CUJs, you typically want to have product market fit. If you're pre-product market fit, you don't need to wire up your journey. You can just ask a product market fit survey, just one survey. But if you're post-product market fit, there's really on optimization or moving friction, building a better product experience, and making sure that your product is making the right steps forward to build, to help users get further along in their lives. The second is that you want stakeholders who want to improve their products. And so sometimes companies come to us and say, hey, I want to do this, but we don't really care about improving our product experience. Well, there's no point in measuring something if you're not really interested in taking action. And the third one is really thinking about, is there cross-functional alignment and excitement? And so when you start getting this data, you want the team to be really excited and energized to be able to take action on what flows are working for users and what flows need optimization and improvement. So one, aligning the critical user journeys. Maybe it's a checkout flow, maybe it's an onboarding flow. For Sprig, creating a survey is one of our core critical user journeys. Implement the program. So wire it up, get those surveys running, usually a very small sample, usually a fraction of a percentage of the user base, just enough to reach stat-sig. And all of these are circulated around the user base as well automatically. By most platforms, we do that as well at Sprig, and so you're not going to worry about resurveying a specific user and then start measuring. And this is really the exciting part. I'm sure for those of you that use NPS, it's really energizing to hear what customers think about our products. But now you're getting a much more actionable data set because it's inward-facing questions that focus on specific parts of the customer experience that the user had just completed. And this gives us that full balance sheet of our user experience. We move from a top-line metric like NPS to a full balance sheet of understanding all the different measurements across our product line. And you can also combine critical user journey metrics with other company metrics as well. So maybe one of your key KPIs for one of your critical user journeys is conversion rate for that journey. But now you can look at people who successfully complete that journey, what their experience was, and pair both of those data sets together to make sure that you have a high conversion rate, but also a high user satisfaction score with that particular flow. The second part is ad hoc measurement. So we have our now continuous measurement wired up, but we're now going to drill down and deeply understand and triangulate and ask more probing questions where we really need to dig in. Maybe there's an experience that we need to improve and we're looking for more data. And so the main difference here from a critical user journey ongoing measurement is that this is more of a reaction to a change in the data, or we're looking to better understand a specific moment in the user experience. And so earlier this week, I was preparing for this talk and procrastinating a little bit. I was using the Robinhood mobile app, big fan of their product, and I got a Sprig study in the mobile native app. And so this is, I don't know the exact details of this survey, but I can reverse engineer it as a user, is that this was a product I was not familiar with that they had, so lending out my stocks for interest. And so it's probably not a critical user journey for them, but what you'll see is that when I tap the X button in the top left, this survey in the second question, which is powered by Sprig, popped up in the mobile application. And it really asked me, and with closed-ended questions, why I decided to not enroll in stock lending. And so you'll see there's 4 or 5 different questions to understand that user behavior, but this is a great example of an ad hoc survey. So really drilling in and understanding maybe non-core flows to see why someone is opting out of this experience. And you'll see there's an example on the right side of some open-ended questions as well. And so the main difference with the ad hoc measurements is that you're starting with a behavioral data question, a revenue data question, or even a CUJ measurement question. Maybe for your onboarding flow, you're seeing a decrease in user sentiment from that CUJ survey that you're running. Maybe you're seeing a specific cohort that is now using your product on a more regular basis than previously. Or perhaps you're seeing a drop in conversion and you need to understand why. The second is choosing that audience. So choosing the events, choosing the attributes, really making sure you're getting targeted and talking to the right group of people. We talked about that verb example. On day 7, I was manually reaching out. But in this case, what we're doing is we're choosing a user cohort and sending out an either trigger email survey, or we're sending out an in-product survey, like we just saw with Robinhood, to understand that very specific cohort. And then asking the right questions. Again, we have a big set of free templates and question banks to choose from, but it is important to make sure you're not asking those leading questions. Do you love our product? Yes and maybe. Not how you want to word it. You want to make sure that it's fully balanced and you're avoiding those leading questions to understand the experience. So if you are looking for inspiration, sprig.com/templates, written by our research team. These are all worded in a way that use research best practices. And you can use these for not only your CUJ measurement, but also for your ad hoc measurement. And so you'll see some questions around the checkout process or the onboarding or the purchase flow or subscription or trial experiences. And this is where you can really benchmark and compare those CUJs or those questions that you're running to other companies in your category or in adjacent categories. And next, taking action. So you not only want to measure the data, you not only want to understand what's working or not working about your user experience, but you also want to prioritize those hotspots, the friction, the bugs, what's not working in the product experience, and drive your product experience forward so you can ultimately meet your behavioral and also your revenue goals. And so just a couple other examples here. People always ask for live examples of how this works in practice. So I'll run through a couple of these. This is Chipper Cash, one of the fastest growing companies in Africa in the fintech space, and they launched a crypto feature. And they launched it, but they weren't seeing the adoption. And so they were more in similar to kind of a PayPal or Venmo for Africa of sending people money. And they launched crypto, no one was using it, and they ran 3 different surveys. The first one, are you familiar with cryptocurrency? The second one, are you aware that that Chipper offers cryptocurrency? And 3, what's holding them back from trying cryptocurrency? And what they found, again, ad hoc surveys, 3 different surveys, really digging in to understand the behavioral data, why we weren't seeing the conversion for this particular flow, is they found that people were very familiar with crypto, but they did not know that Chipper offered crypto. And so it was an awareness issue. And so that really helped them understand that if they can build awareness for this new feature, that they can drive people to start using this feature. This is another example. We touched on it earlier on in the talk. So this is a CUJ that Shift uses, and you'll notice the language is specific to the product experience. And this is a great example of a CUJ to measure how the Shift product is working, and this is in the mobile website. This is another example from Square, also one of our customers. This is a CUJ that they're running, and again, it focuses on improving the product experience, and it focuses on the Square app itself. So it's not asking but recommending the Square, which is going to include a lot of macro external events. It's very inward-facing questions that really focus on what the team can control themselves. So I left a few minutes here for questions, so I'll open it up to the floor.
So I'm in front. Let's ask questions. You talked about prompting the user at the end of the happy path. So in that case, the user has successfully gotten the job to be done. And now you're prompting them for engagement that's not part of getting the job done. How do we avoid that in itself contributing to possibly dissatisfaction because we've now overloaded the user path? Someone who's happy, they finished it. Do we risk them not being happy because now we're compelling further engagement?
Yeah, so that is a great question. And one thing that a lot of companies come to us is that they are concerned that in-product surveys will negatively impact their user experience. But what we often see, and this is true I think for any product out there, is that our users and our customers care more about the product experience than we do as product managers. And so many of, for example, Square's small businesses rely on Square to pay their bills, to pay their mortgage, to feed their family. But as product managers, whether Square meets the customer's needs, we're still getting paid regardless if you're a product manager at that company. And so what we see is we see over a 50% engagement for in-product surveys because the end user is actually, the importance of that product experience working for them is more critical to them than it is to you as a product manager. And so what we often see is rolling these out is that the user is actually highly engaged and they actually feel listened to and they feel a part of the product success because these products are ultimately more important to them than they are for us. So one last question, then we'll wrap up.
So if your goal is to measure your critical user journey over time, how do you, and over really long periods of time, how do you measure or how do you account for changes in the population of users that are answering that, driving the change, especially when you can't necessarily attribute like different attributes to that user, you know what I mean?
Yeah, that's a great question. And so the population size has very little impact on the score that you'll see. And so it's very similar to political polling. They'll go to a county, they'll talk to usually 1% of that county. You need no more than 16,000 responses. Even if you have 1 billion users, you'll never need more than 16,000 responses. And so it is an asymptotic measurement for surveys. It asymptotically trends towards 16,000. And so even if you see massive fluctuations in that user base, the exact number of responses you need will not change. And we do see that even if you have 100 people using your product, usually 15 or 20 is considered stat sig.
But even if the population, like if you enter a new market segment, for example, the people going through that flow are going to be different than the people you originally had, and you still see that 16,000 number, like if you were to see a stat sig like 5 percentage point change, how would you be able to differentiate that from a change you made in the product versus that segment?
Yeah. How about I follow up with you after?
Yeah.
I think we're at time. Yeah, I'll dig in. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, Ryan.